Hi everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to learn how to make the cast-off cap. It is called the cast-off cap because members of the cast-off crew helped me test out the pattern. So a special thanks to Laura, Tyler, Alicia and Maria for helping me test out the pattern. Now I think Mrs. Foamy is totally rocking this hat. You can make them in many colours, as you see. I have made a grey one as well. I still need to secure down the front of the hat. But this one here is a present, and I can't say who it's for because if they watch this video they'll know who it's for. But it's someone in my family, so that might give you an idea. So I hope you guys enjoy this lesson. So let's get started. You're going to be needing a pair of scissors, some stitch markers of your choice. I'm using bobby pins or hair clips, sewing needle, crochet hook to go with your yarn, and a button. This is optional. You can stitch it down or you can use a button. You aren't going to see the button, so it doesn't matter what colour it is. Also, you're going to need some yarn. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using Moda Vera Marvel 8 ply. It's 100% acrylic, and I have 100 grams, and it's approximately 283 meters. I have already made one of these hats, and I got probably one hat and then 3/4 of the way through another one, and I had to put in another ball. We are going to be using 2 strands of yarn for the brim, but what I did was use the bit that comes from the centre and then the outside piece as well. But if you've got 2 balls of the same colour, that will be perfect. Now this is 8 ply yarn, and for this we need a G or a 4mm hook to go with that one. I have had this pattern tested, so a huge shout out to Laura, Tyler, Alicia and Maria for helping me out testing the pattern. They used worsted weight yarn, and I think it was an eye size hook. If that is wrong, I will put a little message just on the screen here to correct that. And they only needed about 5 rows for their hat, but I needed 6 because my yarn is thinner. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. This is the basic crown pattern that you use to make a beanie. It will be slightly curved. If it's laying flat, that's okay, just as long as it's not wavy. So I used 8 ply, 4mm or G size hook. But if you're in the US, you can use worsted weight and you won't need as many rows. My head circumference is 58 centimeters. You are going to increase the crown of the beanie until you have your measurement about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters smaller than you need it. And I know once we have the crown of the beanie finished, if you did 5 rows, you are going to have 60 stitches. I have done 6 rows and I have 72 stitches. And what we need to do is we need to divide this circle into 3. So by putting your joining where you join, which is up here, putting that joining section at the top, so this will be at 12 o'clock if you're looking at a clock. We are going to need our stitch markers now. So grabbing those, you're going to need 2 stitch markers. And what we need to do is divide this in outside here into 3 sections. So if you have 72 stitches divided by 3, that gives you a total of 24 stitches. If you used 5 rounds, that will give you a total of 60 stitches, which if you divide that by 3 gives you 20. So you're going to place your stitch markers at this amount of stitches. So you'll say you are doing round 6 like me, you are going to start with your first stitch. This is going to be classed as stitch number 1. You're going to keep counting until you get to stitch number 24. So I'm just going to do that now very quickly. So that one is number 24. I'm going to put a stitch marker in there. If you have 5 rounds, you're going to put it at your number 20 stitch. You're going to count another 24 stitches and put in a stitch marker. Now, throughout the beanie or the hat that we're making, the stitch markers are only a guide. They are not going to mark the exact stitch that you need. So this is just a guide to let us know where we're going to do the increase in the hat. So let's just pretend that this one is in the right stitch. This is the top of your hat at 12 o'clock on the clock, and you've got your 2 stitch markers. When we make our hat, anything that is between where you start and the stitch marker, so where you start up here and the stitch marker, so all around there, from now on we only put 1 stitch in each stitch, so there is no increasing or decreasing as we go around. When we get to our stitch marker, because we crochet around this way if we're right-handed, if you're left-handed you'll go the opposite direction. When you get to your stitch marker, this is where we are putting in our increases. So we only work our increases or decreases in this front section here, because this is the back seam of the hat, this is the front peak of the hat. So put in your other stitch marker in, and then I will catch up with you. So don't pay attention to my wonderful drawing because I did not do art at school. This is our hat, this is the top where we join, and this here, this long line, and this long line is a stitch marker. The amount of stitches that we have here, you may have 72 stitches or 60. As long as we can divide this amount of stitches by the number 4, it is going to work out. So if you can't divide it by the number 4, you may need to add or subtract 1 or 2 or 3 stitches to get it so you can divide your number by 4. Which is okay, that's perfectly fine. So if you need to move your stitches in to get your number, that's okay. If you need to move your stitch markers slightly out, that's fine too. Just as long as the stitches, including your stitch markers, so count your stitch marker stitches plus the ones in between, as long as that amount can be divided by 4, the increasing will work out evenly on our first row. So there we go, that's mine done. If you have 60 stitches it may look slightly different, but what we need to do is only work into this third of our hat. This is where we do all our increases and decreases. Anything that's in this area is 1 stitch in every stitch, and that will create the back and the sides of the hat. So let's get started and start making this hat, hey? So putting your hook into your work, and I'm just going to adjust the camera so we can see what we're doing. So please let me know if this red yarn is not a very good colour to use on a video. I need to make a red hat, so I'm using this for the video. Hopefully it is okay and it's not too glary. Now, a little tip that I use when I make my seams, instead of doing a chain 3, you'll notice that you can't see the seam that much. It doesn't show up as much sometimes as what the chain 3 does. And what I do is, see how where I slip stitch there's this tiny little hole just here between my fingers, or should I say my thumb? I'm going to put the hook into that hole. I'm going to pull up a loop, got 2, and then I'm going to do a single crochet. If you've done my owl beanie, you would have seen this method on that beanie. And then I'm going to chain 1. This is not as noticeable as that chain 3 that you normally do. I've also seen Beth in Texas do a method where, and I haven't actually tried this one out myself, but thank you to Laura and Tyler for pointing it out for me. What Beth does is does a single crochet and then goes into this little bar here. So not the first one, into the second one. So she goes into there, wraps the yarn over, pulls up a loop, and then does a single crochet. And then does that one more time, so going into the bar that's here, oops, that one, and then completing a single crochet. So I haven't tried that one out yet. I am going to try that on my next project that I do, because I saw that and went, that is so much better than the chain 3. I don't know about you, but it drives me crazy. So what we're going to do now is chain 1. And then we are going to work 1 double crochet into all the stitches until we get to our stitch marker, because remember we said anything in between the stitch markers here is where we do it increasing or decreasing, but anything from where we join around and where we join around is 1 stitch in each stitch. You may like to place a little piece of yarn here or another stitch marker about here somewhere. That might remind you that this is the front of the beanie. This is the 4th one I've made, so I should be okay. Fingers crossed. So we're going to do 1 stitch. We're going to do a double crochet in each stitch, and we are going to continue doing this, just 1 in each stitch, until we get to our very first stitch marker. The next stitch has a stitch marker in it, so I've done double crochet all the way up to here. Now this is where we start to do our increase for the front of the cap. So what you're going to do is you're going to do a increase into the stitch where the stitch marker is. So I'm just going to remove that, and then I'm going to do my increase, so it's 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So I'm going to work my first stitch, and then I'm going to place my stitch marker back into that stitch. And like I said, our stitch markers are guides only. If we get to them and it's not the exact stitch we should be working in, especially when we come to our second one, we aren't going to cry over it, because it's just letting us know, hey, you need to stop doing your increasing. So we've done our 1 increase there. In the next stitch we're going to do 1 stitch. In the next stitch we're going to do 1 stitch. This whole thing is worked in double crochet until we get to the last row. So if I just say 1 stitch, I am talking about the double crochet. So we should have an increase. The first stitch of an increase has our stitch marker in there. We've got 1 by itself, 1 stitch by itself, and then we need to work an increase. So that's working 2 double crochets into the same stitch. Then what we want to do is repeat this all the way around. So you're going to do an increase, 1 by itself, 1 by itself, and then an increase. So when I say 1 by itself, it just means 1 stitch into each stitch. And then an increase is 2 into the same stitch. So our next one is going to be 1 by itself, and then the next one 1 by itself, and then an increase into the next stitch. So I've just done my increase and I have 3 stitches left. So it's 1, 2, and then we're going to make an increase into the stitch marker stitch. And then we're going to put our stitch marker into the last stitch that we made. So don't forget, guys, these stitch markers are only a guide. We aren't going to panic if they don't turn out exact. they're actually reminders. That's what they are. They're reminding us what to do. So what we're going to do now, we need to do 1 double crochet in each stitch until we get back to where we join. So going into the next stitch. Get out of there, you. Need to find shorter bobby pins. I have long hair, so I only use the long ones. So 1 stitch in each stitch until we get back and we're going to join our round. So we're up to where we join. And we're going to join. If we've used a single crochet in chain 1, you're going to join in the chain 1. Going under both loops. Joining with a slip stitch. So we've got our little tiny little hole there. I'm going to go back into there, and if you do slip stitch too tight, that stitch hole is going to close up and you won't be able to find it as easy. So every second row on this pattern from now is actually just a plain row, so it's just 1 stitch in every stitch around. So even when we get to here and we do this section, we're doing 1 stitch in every stitch around. So this is the easy part of the hat. So going into the next stitch, and I'm pretty sure that by now you should be able to do the double crochet. If you've got this far, you've got a lot of practice. So just 1 stitch in every single stitch, including the front section, 1 stitch all the way around. Don't forget to move your stitch marker up. If you go into the stitch that you went into where the stitch marker is where you put your stitch marker. We are up to the end of the row, so we are going to join with a slip stitch. If you use the chain 3, you're joining into the top of the chain, which is the 3rd chain that you made. So this row is a row of increase. So what we're going to do is, first of all we're going to zoom out, and this is where I have joined, and you're going to crochet 1 in each stitch to your first stitch marker. Remember, because only our increasing and decreasing is made on this section of the hat, and the top section of the hat is 1 in each stitch. So do 1 in each stitch into your first stitch marker. So this row is another increase row. So where our stitch marker is, this is the first one, we are going to do an increase. So going into the stitch, working 2 double crochets into the stitch, we're going to put our stitch marker in the first stitch. We're going to work 1 by itself, and then another 1 by itself. So this row we need to work 3 by themselves. So you have an increase, 1, 2 and 3 by themselves, and then an increase. We're going to do 3 more stitches, so it's all by themselves, 1 in each stitch, 1, 2 and 3, and then an increase. And we're going to repeat this all the way around, working 3 stitches by themselves and then the increase. 1, 2, 3, and an increase. Repeat this till we get to our stitch marker. So when we come around, we've got an increase, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase, but the stitch marker's in the next stitch. Because remember, like I said, these are only guides. These aren't exact markers. It's a reminder to tell us to stop increasing. Because if I didn't have them there, trust me, I would just keep increasing the whole way around. And then realise I did it wrong. And have to pull out all those stitches. And not be very happy about it either. So now, because we've got to our stitch marker, remember what we need to do. We've done our increasing, so the second stitch marker reminds us that we have to stop our increasing and just work one stitch in every stitch. So just one double crochet in each until we get to where we join. So we're going to join our work and then this row, because our last row was, the row we just completed was an increase round, this round is one in each stitch, remember? Because every second row is just plain old crocheting. Oh my, I just said crocheting. I should say crocheting, shouldn't I, guys? So one lonely stitch in each stitch, all the way around this time. So even where our increase section is, we're going to do one stitch in each stitch, all the way around until we get to there. So there is no increasing or anything in here, just one in each stitch all the way around. So we are going to join our round. And because the last row was one in each stitch, that means this row is an increase round. So working your stitch, if not working your chain 3. So as you can see, sometimes it's a little bit hard to get it. So this one, our last row we did, let's just double check. Our last row we had 3 stitches in between our increase. So our next row needs 4 stitches in between our increases. So we've joined, we're going to do one stitch in each stitch until we get to the very first stitch marker.